You missed. Try one more. Okay, that's enough. You're gonna get hurt. Easy, gentle. There you go. How was that?
Fine.
Alright, so in the last video you saw I was setting up my tent, and it came, my teepee, my hot tent teepee, and it came with some what I call garden variety stakes. They're your typical Y-shaped MSR type stake, but I wanted something a little more solid for winter, so I went ahead and spent a fortune on 10 titanium stakes. Now they're from a company called Wynea. These things were $3.20, so let's talk about these. So the obvious question is why titanium over steel or aluminum? And it's a function of strength and weight. And the way we measure those things is we do what's called a strength to weight ratio. And in metric units, if we do the strength in kilonewtons, and if we do the weight as a density, as a mass per kilogram, we can calculate a ratio and compare different materials. So in the case of these three materials, aluminum has a strength to weight ratio of 63. Stainless steel, sorry, I gotta go the other way around. Stainless steel has a strength to weight ratio of 63. Aluminum has a strength to weight ratio of 115, so almost double this. So what that means is that I get twice the strength for half the weight, or I get 4 times the strength for a quarter of the weight. I mean, but it's a ratio. And then thirdly, when I get to a titanium alloy like this, the strength to weight ratio of this thing is in the 260 range. So it's twice the aluminum alloy, and it's four times the stainless steel. So I get a lot of strength for the same weight, or I get the same strength for a lot less weight. So it depends on what you're doing it. Now these things all look like they weigh relatively the same. So in this case, this will be twice as strong as this, and 4 times as strong as that for about the same weight. Now, some materials like Dyneema, for instance, has an extremely high strength to weight ratio, but it's not a material applicable to making a peg because it has a strong ratio. It has a strong strength in what we call tension when we pull on it, but in compression it would fail quickly, or in a lateral force. So I have several tents, so I've accumulated several kinds of pegs over the years. But let me just show you quickly what the evolution of pegs over the years. I don't actually have a plastic one, but the first pegs were these steel pegs like this, straightforward, kind of heavy, and I'll weigh them all. And after the steel peg came a basic aluminum peg like this one, and the advantage of aluminum, of course, is that it's lightweight, but the disadvantage is that they bend easily and get damaged. So one of the solutions for that was something like this, make them square instead of round, and maybe add a little bit of strength. This is an MSR square aluminum peg. Trick, by the way, you know what I use these for? I use them for baked potatoes. When I'm wrapping a baked potato in foil and I want to cook it on the fire, I stick the peg through it, and the heat conducts so quickly through there that it cooks the potato from the outside and from the inside. So then a solution after that was to make aluminum pegs with this V profile, and it gave them a little bit more rigidity, but they still get damaged. And then the next evolution was an aluminum peg like this with what I call a Y profile, and a little more rigidity, again, harder to bend, but they still bend. Actually, a spot where they bend typically is right there. And then, of course, here's the ultimate evolution. It's an aluminum, or not aluminum, a titanium stake peg, nail, basically. And apparently these things can be pounded right in the ice. So we'll test that outside. So let's zero the scale and let's weigh them through their evolution. So the steel one, 26 grams. The original aluminum pegs, 16 grams. So you shaved 10 grams. That's impressive. And this one, 8 grams. So half of the other aluminum peg with about the same strength. And then we got to these little guys, 7 grams. I mean, that's really, really light, but you're sacrificing a lot of strength. So if you're having to nail this into some solid grounds where you encounter rocks, this won't work. But if you're just putting it in not sand, there's a different kind of peg for sand, but if you're putting it in a nice soil, this will be fine. And I'll summarize the weights. I guess this one has this little loop on the end, which probably adds a gram, so that's 13 grams. And that's on the end because these hold so good in there that they become very hard to pull, so you gotta have some leverage. And then the titanium pegs, they're not going to be light, but they're extremely strong. So 15 grams. So 15 grams compared to the original one, the first one, which was 16 grams. So titanium and aluminum, similar weight, but this is going to be way stronger. And that's another test we'll do. I'll probably end up destroying these in a test. Time for a real-world experiment. Let's see how frozen the ground is, and this is where I'm going to drive my stakes. I even have a real-world hammer. Alright. Test subject number 1, the steel one. Actually, that's pretty good. It went in and comes out. Test subject number 2, aluminum. I'm less confident in this one. That would hold, no problem. Didn't bend. Number 3, also aluminum. I'm gonna have a hard time getting it out. There. Great. 4. Also went in. Fantastic. Wow. I bought these for nothing. And they don't need to be deep in winter because you get I went in very easily. Oh. Okay, so when I scrape the snow away, fair to say that the ground underneath is frozen, but perhaps not as frozen as if I was, say, somewhere that had a lot of moisture when the ground froze and it was more ice. So there's obviously a lot of space in the ground here. I'm going to go try it somewhere else. I'm going to go try it on ice, on a pond. It's perhaps a little counterintuitive, but the hardest ground around my property is probably this soil, this ground here. It's counterintuitive because it's exposed to the sun, but what would have happened is the sun melted the snow formed water, and then it refroze. So this ground's probably got a lot more ice in it, and it's probably harder. So I'm going to retry that test here on this solid ground, Trying again, even though this one's bent a little bit, but let's do the steel one. There, it kind of broke through the frost and it did go in. Okay, that's good. Let's try the aluminum. I think we're going to have the same problem as earlier. That would hold. Didn't go that deep. These MSR ones are very impressive, actually. They're very rigid. They go in easily. You can hammer on them. My teacup. Holy smokes. There. Alright. I'm not going to attempt this one. Let's do the titanium peg. Holy. That was interesting. Not exactly what I expected. I expected the titanium to be an outright winner, but it's not. So, you know, here's what I've concluded from this test, is that in winter, so, you know, today is February 7th, so even though the ground appears completely frozen, there is still some porosity to the ground, and you know, there's dirt and there's rocks and there's water and ice and things like that. So all 6 of these worked on a ground where I scraped away the top layer of snow and then exposed the ground. So it's not as frozen. It's still frozen. They all worked. Now, when I went to what I think is the harder ground, the one that was really frozen, again, they all worked, but a couple of things that I noticed. So this one, because of the shape of it, when you drive on top here, and in a perfect world I was using a hammer, but when you drive on top, there's energy that's not going directly into the stake. Same with this one. You can see it even has a bend. So by virtue of their shape, these two are not ideal. Now, then it comes down to these ones I don't use very often. I just don't have enough of them. In fact, I use them for a while, but I'm out of these. Now, in terms of these two, in the summer, if weight is an absolute option, you know, you're shaving 5 or 6 grams by using these, but I don't think it's a big deal. So here's my conclusion. My conclusion is that these two virtually weigh the same thing, and by virtue of their shape, they drive in easily and they don't bend. So I'm going to say that this was a good purchase. It's $3.20 per stake, but these things do not bend this way. They're made out of titanium. They're going to be nearly impossible to bend, and maybe that's the last test I'll do. A destructive test. So I'm going to put it in a vise about halfway, let's say, and then I'm going to put a snipe on it and see how easily can I bend it. And it took no effort. Like I just, you know, that's a destructive test. Just with barely any amount of pressure, and I'm going to, you know, I'm going to reverse the damage here. I'm going to restore my, well, here, just so you can see. That was nothing. You saw how much force I put on it. That's the titanium. I'm putting it about same length in, halfway in, half in the vise, half out, and then I'm just going to apply the same kind of force. Oh, it did bend. Not nearly as much. It's kind of, it's more of a, it's springing back, but it bent. It absolutely bent. That's not an unexpected result. I mean, this is a catastrophic failure. With almost, you know, we've all been there, right? You drive this with a rock and then it bends and it's damaged. And so, and the odds of doing that to a titanium peg with a rock is next to impossible. So, conclusion, for $3 you get an absolute bulletproof tent peg that'll go in the ground in all 4 seasons, almost impossible to bend, and I don't remember exactly. I'll put the number in a minute when I get, but I think this and this virtually weigh the same weight. Hope you enjoyed that, folks. It's a quick video, but it's something I curiously wanted to do.